You're watching the Daily Decrypt. Welcome to Currency Competition. I am your host, Amanda B. Johnson, and today's episode is brought to you by the Merkle. Could a digital currency, a cryptocurrency, run without a blockchain? Such was my question for Maidsafe's Paige Peterson. Without any further ado, here she is. Well, Paige Peterson from Maidsafe, tell us a bit about who you are and what you do at Maidsafe before we dig on into the software.
My name's Paige. I've been working at Maidsafe for almost 2 years now, doing communication and outreach and kind of community building. I was doing a little bit of web development, but kind of have been focusing more on the outreach, especially now as we're starting to introduce actual software. That role will be heightened a lot. So yeah, essentially I'm communications, go to events and speak at events and talk to interested parties, users that would want to use the network just to store data and whatnot, but also for developers that want to build on top of the platform.
Right on. Well, then let's get, as you said, some releases have been coming out. Let's get a status update as of today of what is available to use as far as Maidsafe software goes, and what is it actually doing right now versus what may be available in a month, 2 months.
Right. So a couple weeks ago, I guess 2 weeks ago from yesterday, we released the official launcher, which is essentially the user interface to connect to the network. So we haven't yet released the actual client for hosting a node on the network itself. Right now it's in a testing phase. So part of that testing phase is being able to have the team control all of the nodes, which is about 50 nodes right now. They've been saying in between 50 and 100, but I think right now it's at 50. And kind of just getting that all squared off before releasing it into the wild, essentially, and letting anyone host a node on the network. It makes it a lot easier to, wipe the whole network and kind of start over and some critical bugs in that before we want to launch the user hosted node. So we released essentially what is the client node. So they're in the Maidsafe network. There's 2 different nodes. There's a client node and a network node. A network node is the nodes that are hosting and routing data. And then the client node is one that the client interacts with. So if you're wanting to host data and also interact with the network with your own data, then you would essentially be running 2 different nodes. There's a client node and a network node. So we released the client node part. That's essentially what it is.
Got it.
And then yesterday we released the API, the beginnings of the API, so that developers can start working with the network that exists right now. So it's still closed off, but you can essentially start building apps or integrating existing apps so that it uses the storage capabilities of the network. So there's a very minimal API right now. It'll obviously expand as we add more features such as messaging and whatnot, but it's ready to go, and we definitely want to see some developers start playing with it as soon as they feel comfortable. It's pretty easy to understand because there's not a ton that you can do without some of the features that we plan on integrating in the near future. But it's essentially being able to put data to the network, have a user authenticate to the network, retrieve their data, store new data, public or private data, things like that. So that's essentially what we have right now. And then the next step is, obviously fixing bugs and various things. But the next main step is getting the network nodes able to be hosted by users. It'll still be a test network at that point, and we'll still have kind of some logging capabilities that will be removed when there's a kind of more official launch of the network. But it'll still, we'll be in a test for a little bit launchable.
So I have a question. So I registered an ID. I got the launcher, right? The
yeah, I saw
launcher.
that. Yeah,
so
cool.
So even though it's technically still in testing, like my ID, will it stay, or is my ID going to be wiped and I'll have to re-register it and hope that someone else doesn't take the daily decrypt?
So the first, if you installed it like in the first week or something, so it could have even been wiped again, but yeah, it's been wiped at least once.
Shit.
And perhaps twice. So kind of plan on a weekly wipe until essentially the nodes are hosted by users, because you can't really wipe the network when the nodes are hosted by users. So,
okay.
And yeah.
Well, this leads me into the meat that I wanted to talk about today, because I just find I really have no idea how to even envision the Maidsafe. As you may or may not know, viewer, there exists a Maidsafe coin, which was used primarily as like a funding vehicle and to represent ownership in the network's usefulness when it launched in the future. Maidsafe coin is a colored coin on Bitcoin, living on the Mastercoin protocol. And when was that launched, Paige? Remind me.
So we did the crowdfunding whole thing in April of 2014, so
okay.
Almost 2 years ago.
Okay, so 2 years ago, this colored Bitcoin was created, and its value ever since has been reflected in people's anticipation of what the Maidsafe network's value and usability would be. And so I meet Paige at Liberty Forum a couple of months ago, and I actually went to your presentation, Paige, and I was going to like ask a question in the Q&A saying like, so how will this colored Bitcoin, this Maidsafe coin, be usable on the Maidsafe peer-to-peer network protocol itself? But before I could even ask that question, you basically said, oh, and by the way, like Maidsafe coins, as they exist as colored Bitcoins now, are intended to be like basically burnable, transferable for this thing called SafeCoin, which is a blockchain-less currency intended for the Maidsafe network. Like, how does that even? You lie, Paige. You lie.
No, it's true. So essentially, yeah, so to reiterate, the people that own Maidsafe coin right now, when the SafeCoin and the network is live and the SafeCoin is implemented, it'll essentially be a trade 1-for-1. So you'll get one SafeCoin for one Maidsafe coin. That'll be perhaps a complicated process. I don't know the exact details of how we're going to do it, but it's essentially like that. It shouldn't be too hard. Maybe it might be a little bit of manual efforts while everyone's kind of doing it all at once, but who knows. So to get to SafeCoin, it's essentially using the language and the routing on the Safe network to move the SafeCoin around. So we don't use a blockchain at all for anything. So all of the data on the network is treated very similar. So the way that you would perhaps give someone else permission to view a piece of data that you have stored on the network would be a very similar process that you would have of sending a SafeCoin to another person. So instead of getting a global consensus, you're using this essentially new consensus that we've built, which is based off of the network infrastructure, which is a DHT. So it's essentially a DHT is a distributed hash table, and that means that it's a table of hashes where the hashes are distributed. So not everyone has every hash. It's like localized. You only store what you need to know, essentially. So You're only storing information about nodes that are kind of nearby you in this network. And whenever I say nearby in this sense, it's not geographically nearby, it's nearby in the namespace. So, you know, you could be node 14 and I could be node 20, and we could be sort of nearby each other in this namespace, but we could be on completely opposite sides of the world. So it's essentially based on generating an ID every time you log onto the network as a node. So you're essentially given a random ID in the network, which is how we can disperse the names and the IDs as much as possible around the world. So,
and now, has the sending of safe coins been simulated within the Maidsafe testing, or is this even more experimental than that?
So the SafeCoin implementation is based off of a kind of a lower level implementation of messaging. So, and this, I should also say that there are two kinds of data on the Safe network. There's data that you're uploading. So you upload a file, it gets chopped up into chunks and encrypted, and that data is spread out throughout the network. That's called immutable data. You're not able to change the data. And if you were to say want to upload a new version of that data, that file, then you would essentially be uploading a whole new file, because it's based off of hashes. And as we know in Bitcoin lands, a little bit of change in a piece of data creates a completely different hash. So that's called immutable data. And then there's structured data, which is mutable data that people who have authorization to mutate the data or change the data can update it with whatever they need. So this is how you essentially create tokens or any sort of asset that you would want to be able to exchange between peers on the network or users on the network. And that is not chopped up into chunks, because it's a small enough piece of data that you don't need to chop it up. You just encrypt it and store it a couple times redundantly so it doesn't get lost. And in that way, you can have special characteristics so that you can change these parts of data. So therefore, if we're talking about SafeCoin, it's just a piece of data that has the signature, the cryptographic signature of the previous owner and the current owner. And as soon as the current owner says, I'm sending a message to tell the nodes that are in charge of this, of kind of making sure that this safe coin is secure and not changed by anyone else but me. Once I send my signature to them saying, I want to send this to a new person, the nodes that are in charge of that piece of data, such as this safe coin, will change the signature so that the previous signature gets wiped, and then the person that just sent it is the new previous signature. And then, so it's essentially kind of like digital cash, where we're kind of, it's easy to kind of relate to that, because there is no kind of trail of payments, unless perhaps if you opt into a third-party thing that would track the IDs of a coin, but that's completely optional.
Let me ask, how many safe coins will there be?
Oh, there's like, okay, it's like 431 billion, something around there.
And is that like the same number as the current number of Maidsafe coins?
No, Maidsafe coins, there's only 10% out in existence, because there's part of the network is to use these coins to incentivize people to host the data. So if you're if you're a network node, then the network will essentially create these bits of data, and you enter into a sort of lottery. And well, you don't enter. The network just essentially awards you SafeCoin in proportion to how much people are successfully able to get from your node.
And this 431 million or whatever it is that a hard cap forever? Can I always feel confident that my shares in SafeCoin will not be diluted? And if so, without a blockchain, is that somehow still provable with the code?
So yes, you have as much faith in the number of SafeCoins not increasing as you have the same faith as the number of Bitcoins not increasing. If the core team decides to go rogue and change the numbers, like obviously there's going to be like, no, but I mean, well, it could technically happen for both Bitcoin or Maidsafe or any other cryptocurrency, right? But then people would revolt and fork, and it wouldn't stand. So it's got the same probability as Bitcoin increasing in amounts. And then to answer your second point, it's a little trickier to guarantee the existence of a coin or who owns the coin if you're also implementing like a network that is geared towards privacy. So one of the main goals of the Safe network is to implement a completely private network that can't be trackable. And that's essentially, like, privacy is the opposite of accountability, right? They're both good for certain use cases, but blockchains are essentially not private at all. And therefore, it's a lot easier to essentially check who has what coin and to make sure that everything's okay. So in order for the Safe network to kind of guarantee that perhaps a coin isn't double spent, it uses a completely different set of logic, which is based off of the DHT, which uses essentially the nodes that are nearby a piece of data. So say we'll use SafeCoin again as an example. Each SafeCoin will have an ID, just as every node has an ID, just as every file chunk has an ID on the network. And that ID essentially dictates which nodes are responsible for keeping track of it. So instead of a global blockchain network keeping track of everything, the nodes in the Maidsafe, or I should say the Safe network, Maidsafe is the company, the Safe network's the network. The nodes have specialized, essentially, personas or roles to keep track of the data that they're responsible for, and which is based off of their distance in this DHT, which sounds like, what if you're a bad actor and you want to double spend, or perhaps if someone's if say you want to kind of have a good chance of being the owner of all of the nodes surrounding a particular SafeCoin, which is essentially a Sybil attack, being able to flood the network with nodes so that you can at least take control of part of the network. This worry is you can't really ever remove it completely from a decentralized network, just as Bitcoin has its own problems with people being able to flood the network. And it's not really the same mapping. It's not really called a Sybil attack if you're, doing a 51% attack on a blockchain, but it's kind of a similar idea where you do the best you can. You can't ever 100% guarantee that someone won't be able to attack a network, but you put in as much difficulty as possible. So, and also like reduce incentives. So if perhaps you flood the network with all of these nodes, and then you only are able to change a small, you're only able to affect one SafeCoin, that probably isn't worth it. So it's about balancing the difficulty of doing it and disincentivizing against it. And there's a few things that go into the security to prevent being able to surround a node or surround a piece of data with your nodes. But it comes down to the fact that nodes are given random IDs when they join the network. They don't get to choose where they are in the network. And for most interactions that would say you're sending a safe coin or whatnot, these interactions require two groups of consensus. So you're not only getting one group of nodes to come to consensus and say, okay, this can happen. Now we need to send this and get permission from another group of nodes that also needs to come to consensus. So that essentially makes it even harder to do. So say a group is 32 nodes, the closest 32 nodes to a piece of data. And the consensus requires, say, 28 out of 32 nodes, because maybe 4 of those nodes are bad actors, and you don't want to have to get consensus a bunch of times. You just want to be able to disregard a few nodes that maybe they go offline at that exact moment or something. So you get 28 out of 32 nodes, which is a really secure proportion that we've been able to measure. And then, so that's about 88% that you would need to kind of flood the network to be able to kind of know that you'll be able to attack something. But when you add on a second group of consensus requirement, you're essentially doubling that. So that is almost that's over 150% of the network that you would need to flood. So you need to say, okay, the network is this big. I need to have that much, and then 50% more. So it's just pushing the probability of attack to a really, really low standard.
So, I mean, because that makes it sound like I wouldn't even say I had a safe coin and I wanted to double spend it. Would it be correct to say first I would have to somehow identify which node IDs are in charge of tracking that safe coin? And second, I'd have to spin up 2 completely different quorums of nodes, say 2 quorums of 32, and I would somehow have to hope that when I spun up those nodes, that the safe network would randomly give me the exact ones that I needed in order to be able to double spend the exact safe coin that I wanted to double spend.
Exactly. Yep, that's exactly what I was trying to say. Yep. So,
okay, well,
and that's kind of that, I guess, before you go on, that's a similar process that we're doing with all data on the network as well. So say someone else wanted to attack a piece of data that they know is, maybe there's some, state-sanctioned criminal and they're trying to censor some piece of data. They would have to do a very similar process in order to, say, delete a piece of data or anything.
And now, let us switch gears to a sort of currency-related question of SafeCoin, which is to say the value of one SafeCoin went to the equivalent of $3 US. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to pay you $1.50's worth of SafeCoin. Could I ever send you half a SafeCoin?
In the current implementation, no, but that's definitely that's on the roadmap for future looking at. But with such a high amount, we're not in a rush, since there's, essentially
that'd be a good problem to have, basically.
Essentially half a trillion coins about. That's essentially not going to be a problem for now, because Bitcoin's obviously only 21 million, and I mean, yeah, exactly. It would be a good problem to have, and it's something on the roadmap, but we're not, we're definitely considering other things are more important to deal with right now.
Would such a thing, just out of my own curiosity, would such a thing be like technically feasible though? Like, could you like, I don't know, could you like cut a message in half?
I've heard it's possible. I don't know the details though. David Irvine, who's the founder, said it's possible, and it's just not on the immediate roadmap. There could be a brief explanation that he gives somewhere in the community forum that we have. He kind of frequents there a lot. And
well, let's tell people about that. Where's the community forum? Where can people learn more?
The community forum is forum.safenetwork.io. And this is a forum that's not run by Maidsafe. It's run by, I'm technically an admin, but everyone else on the moderation and admin team are just community members, and I'm kind of just there as a sort of a way to balance things out, to have someone from the Maidsafe team that, but not having everyone, you know, not in charge of the forum at all. So it's completely community run, but we use it internally for most of our messaging to the outside world right now. We post weekly developer updates every Tuesday. So yesterday we posted one, and that was where we announced the API. And yeah, so if not to flood David with a lot of new forum posts, but he's very responsive on the forum, and if you have a dire question, he'll probably respond to it if like someone else in the community doesn't get to it first. Hopefully we can get to it first, but it's a very kind of tight-knit community that's over the past month or two has been growing really fast, perhaps because of the coin price increase, but I assume more that. Yeah, I think that's probably getting people's attention, but I like to think that people are just like not as interested in that as the actual, you know, decentralized internet part, because that's what's really exciting to me.
Well, very good. Well, thank you, Paige, for your time. And yeah, I hope to get an update from you as more software releases come out in the future.
Of course. Yeah, just let me know.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Amanda.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Merkle, a cryptocurrency and blockchain news hub with regular technical analyses of all of the top coin networks. The Merkle also covers the fintech space, covering business maneuvers and partnerships as well as product releases. You can find it yourself for free at themerkle.com. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for watching, and I hope you come back tomorrow. Have a good day. First, we saw a presentation by Maidsafe, a software project to decentralize the internet that's been 10 years in the works.